Talk Radio.
You're listening to Race and Religion with Jeff Hanlon, only on LA Talk Radio.
Well, good morning, good afternoon, good evening, whatever time this should find you. My name is Jeff Hanlon. I am on LA Talk Radio in Los Angeles, California. Coming at you from the San Fernando Valley. This is the show of Race and Religion. And I have to apologize first and foremost. There we go. A little technical help there. There you go. Thank you very much. I'm suffering from something. I don't know what I got. I don't know if I got allergies or sinuses or a cold. But I hope it gets where it needs to be, because I'm leaving next Monday to Italy. So I'll be gone for the next 2 weeks, starting next Monday. I'm really excited about that. I hope that the police in Italy are nice. I had an encounter. I was with my wife. We went to a foreign country. I don't want to say which one. Put a negative light on the country, but we got pulled over. I had rented a truck or a little SUV, and went down the wrong way, and I got pulled over, and we had to pay the police. And I felt really crummy about that, paying the police off. Maybe they don't make enough money. I don't know what it is, but I just felt kind of corrupt like them. You know, I felt this is nasty. I mean, our police do some things, but they don't take money. I know that. I wouldn't even offer money. And I've had a lot of police pull me over the years. I mean, I'm 56 years old, so I mean, been around, and I used to drive for a living, several occasions. And then just as a teenager, we used to like to pile in a bunch of teenagers, friends of mine, in the car, crank up the music, and go have fun. So we got pulled over a lot. And sometimes you'll have, a great encounter with the police, and then other times maybe not so much. So today I wanted to talk about police relations, and I don't like to label it as police brutality, as some would, because I just want to start off by saying that, first and foremost, I think everybody out there supports law enforcement, and if they don't, they should. So that's something that is not even an issue, the support of police and what they do. It's one of those jobs that as a child, what do you want to be when you grow up? I want to be a policeman. I want to be a fireman, a doctor. And so it's one of those jobs that's just filled with integrity, and we look up to the police. And, they've been getting a bad rap. There's, again, that sliver out there. And I talk about sliver a lot because in each situation that we're talking about, whether it is race or religion or, race relations, police and community relations, the majority, we get along great. And there's a lot of interaction that takes place that we don't hear about. So I wanted to just kind of touch on some things that have happened to me over the years, and then also things that have come up, in the news. But I think any conversation or any issue that you want to talk about can be driven by the questions that are being asked. So if the wrong questions are being asked, the conversation can go in the wrong way. And so I remember when I was working for the St. Louis Globe-Democrat, and we would be in a van with a bunch of teenagers, and they'd be looking through the paper because we had a bunch of papers in the back that we were giving out. And some were looking at the comics, and some were looking at the sports page. But I always was drawn to the Metro section of the St. Louis Globe-Democrat. And in the Metro section, it seemed daily, there was always a story about some racial issue. And I used to keep those papers, and I wish I would have still kept them. But the issue I had was the way the story was formatted, or the way the story was, it wasn't complete. The questions weren't being asked the proper questions, or there was no follow-up. So we didn't know what the end result was. And so it was really frustrating because we weren't getting anywhere with these stories. So I think the communities, whether they're in the black community or the white community, the only thing that we really want from the police is respect. We feel that we're paying the police, and we just want to be treated fairly. But I still want to start off by saying the support is there to the police. The job that they do is just insane. The knuckleheads that they have to run into, and I'm not talking about regular citizens. I'm talking about the guys that want to start a problem. That's a huge, huge concern to any police officer. They don't know if somebody's carrying a gun, if somebody has a knife, if somebody has warrants out on them. And so their day-to-day activity out there on the street, and some come from small towns, some work in smaller municipalities. They don't have as much craziness going on, but it can still happen. It can happen anywhere. I worked as security in a hotel in Beverly Hills, and you would think that you would have no issues whatsoever in Beverly Hills. And yet the bar that we had in the hotel would draw in men with suits and, on the upper echelons of society, if you will. And you think that those people would be well behaved. And that wasn't always the case. So there was times we had to take men down in their suits in the bar in Beverly Hills. And so if you're not familiar with the occupation of a police officer, you're really not going to get what goes through their mindset, because you can't. If you don't experience something, you have no experience at it. And so a lot of times we see on the news when we hear about these issues with the police, we don't really get the full story until later, and then by that time it's too late. Everybody's upset and they don't really want to hear the story. And I know that there's attorneys in there that saying, don't say anything right now. Let's wait, and let's not give it out in piecemeal. But the problem there is when the community doesn't know what happened, they start listening to other people in the community or on the streets, and they're getting the story half-baked, and it can cause a huge problem. But the police officers, and God bless all of them across this country, and I know that all of us support the police 100%. We don't like to see these stories. Look at these two guys over there. Can I get in on that shot? We'll have to put something up there so we can block that. But, they don't like to hear these stories, the regular citizens out there. And so when we see these stories on the news, it's very heart-wrenching. And so we'll talk about some of them. One thing that, again, I say I don't like statistics, because you don't know where the source is coming from, and you don't know where they're getting these statistics, and if these statistics, plus tax, are geared to someone's agenda, then it starts to make you not trust statistics. So when we look at these issues with the officers and members of the black community, sometimes when we have shootings, these high-profile shootings, the emphasis is on the race and not so much, or it's secondary, on the incident itself. Well, if you think about it, the majority of police officers in the United States are probably Caucasian. And it's changing. I don't have the exact numbers. Maybe I'll look that up for the next show. But the majority of them are Caucasian. And so if they're patrolling in a non-white neighborhood, then the interaction is going to be between a white police officer and a non-white citizen. So that in itself is going to just tell you that that's always going to happen. So when the incident occurs, the emphasis on race should not be there, unless there are circumstances that lend itself to that. If there's something said, if there's witnesses that heard some racial epithets thrown, if there's some history of the person that comes out, that he does this all the time, that he mouths these things off in a bar. And so if there's no direct link between the race and the incident, I wish they would focus more on the incident as not to incite the communities. Because the damage that's being done is, sometimes it feels like it's irreversible. It's really bad. And I know that, look, there's like a spectrum. You have a spectrum in any profession. And in this spectrum, you're going to have different people that are working in this industry that come from all walks of life. They come from different cultures. They come from different upbringings. But if I'm just going to talk about Caucasian police officers. So on one end of the spectrum, at the lowest rung, maybe not the lowest low, but you're going to have a jerk. You're going to have a jerk on your hands. And then the rest, so let's just say that's 2%. Then the rest, all the way through, are great, solid police officers. They have no hate in their hearts. They're fine, decent people. They understand how to treat people. They do it all the time. And then at the very end, you're going to have the person that just should not be on the police force whatsoever. The jerk, maybe you can train him and teach him. But the other one, you got to get rid of them. That's the ones that are doing some harm out there that have become high profile. And we all know that when we see these cases, and you really have to take the case by case. What happens sometimes is you'll have a pattern. The media will say that there's a pattern because we look at all these cases that we have. And so I go back to the majority of the police officers are going to be Caucasian. It's not really a pattern if everybody on the police force is white. Now, it is changing. And that's where diversity, the beauty of diversity, comes in. This is why you would want diversity. Because I've seen some of these high-profile shootings or incidents, and some of them are being committed by non-white police officers, which goes to show you that we're all the same. Police officers are just like regular people. We don't look at them as regular people because we see this uniform and this badge and this, the gun and the taser and the handcuffs and the mag-like flashlight and the billy club. We see all these things. And so we hold them to a very high standard and put them up on a pedestal. And so when they fail, it's so much worse than, say, if a postal worker failed or somebody at the grocery store. But they are the same as the grocery store worker. They're no different. They're the same as the football coach at the high school. So I know we expect a lot from them, but they're just like us, and they will fail, and they'll continue to fail. And as the police departments grow with diversity, you're going to have more and more. There was just one, I think he got actually convicted. He was an Asian police officer, and there was a shooting in a stairwell. And he messed up. I don't know if there was hate in his heart. So you have certain incidents that we don't know what the least common denominator is in all of these. And if there is one. I would like to think it's just that they made a bad choice. Or they're just a bad dude that shouldn't be on the police force whatsoever. So, you could have somebody that is just, let's say, a racist police officer. I hope we wouldn't have any of those. But you could have. I don't know what the percentage would be. I'm sure it'd be very small. I want to really get this point out to the non-white community. Trust me when I say, and I know that sometimes the police, they rotate the patrols. So some will be in the valley one day, and then the next time they're down in the inner city, then the next time they're Hollywood or whatever. Same thing in St. Louis or all the other cities. They rotate them around in different positions. And so if you think that these jerks, the small minority, that are, causing a problem in the communities. If you think they're not a jerk when they come over to our side of the street, that's incorrect, because they're there. They don't pull you over and then look at you and go, "Oh, wow, you're a white guy. You can go." What was I thinking? No, it doesn't happen, man. It just doesn't happen. And so a jerk is a jerk. So a lot of it to me is not really the race. It's the mentality. And again, some of this mentality is justified. It has to be there because of the roughness of the job. This mentality goes back probably to George Washington. Now we've really softened them up. We got community-based policing, and the training is different, and we get, community watchdogs, and that's great. That's what you need, oversight. And know that there's a consequence for the way you behave. Body cams, awesome. Awesome. God, if we could have had those a long time ago. So the interaction between the police and the white community is really the same as in the black community. But just the fact that there's a racial difference, and if it goes south, then it usually becomes the reason that it went south was because of the racial difference. When in fact, it could be, but it also could not be. But if the perception is there, that perception spreads like wildfire. And now suddenly, everybody feels it. So the change has come. It's been a slow-moving process. But if I go back to my original sentence, in that, first of all, number one, we support the police. All the citizens want, both white, black, Hispanic, Asian, Indian, everybody, is to be treated with respect. But if you have a day in, day out negative interaction with knuckleheads, sometimes the non-knuckleheads get kind of swept up into that mentality, unfortunately. And then they get upset and they talk and they tell their friends. And then when you talk to the police on the talk shows and whatnot, they don't understand. They don't understand what we do. They don't understand what we face. And we do, and it's unfortunate that these things kind of get blown out of proportion. One of the things that I wish I would have seen was when Barack Obama was president and Eric Holder was the Attorney General, there was an incident once, excuse me, and it was between a white police officer and a black motorist. They brought them to the White House to have a beer, and they sat down and had a beer because the cop was Irish. So I don't know what that did. I don't know how far that went. I would have loved to have seen on the day after Election Day to say, "Thank God I'm here. I am coming to the rescue. And I am going to have a forum with all of the major chiefs of police throughout the country. And we're going to discuss citizen approach and interaction between the citizens. Because that approach really sets the ball rolling. And it's not always the police that's setting the negative tone on the approach. We'll talk about the other side in a second. So first and foremost, we support the police without a doubt. It's not even an issue. But whether it's the training or getting the word out, you see a lot of these videos on the internet now. And you'll see the people are starting to film the police. And so you'll see and you're shaking your head going, how did this go down this way? What happened? Why is this necessary? So like I talked about the corrupt police that took my money in the foreign country, the same is true in the United States if the interaction is not a positive one. And it doesn't need to be a negative one unless the person that's being stopped, questioned, that or the police are responding to, becomes out of control or uncooperative. And the police have a lot of little things that they use in their tool chest to justify a lot of things. We know that. Probable cause, a reasonable suspicion. You're obstructing justice. You're impeding my investigation. You're failing to ID. We need to stop and frisk you. So maybe the police are really not being told how damaging that can be and how fast that wildfire spreads when a stop turns ugly. Because the damage is so bad. It's so bad. It has an effect that you start to lose confidence and respect. And when you lose confidence and respect for the police, that's bad. You see certain countries, the one thing I would suggest, if it's El Salvador, Guatemala, or Nicaragua, or Mexico, whatever it is, and I said this before, that I would start there. I would start with the judicial system, the courts, the police, to fix the rule of law in order to get some of these countries up and running where they should be. So the approach on a stop or an interaction doesn't need to start off with such an abrasive and intrusive manner. Because once you get that, you can get guys that just don't care. It's like, you're not going to treat me that way. I'm not a criminal, but I'm not going to be treated that way either. And so any type of pushback whatsoever can set this ball rolling down this hill very fast and in the wrong way. And if it's been going on for years, and if certain communities, aren't feeling it. Now, here's one thing you have to think about. You have a city, you have so many police officers. The city's going to decide, or the chief of police, where these officers are going to go in the city. You have a quiet part of the city where the crime rate's low. Might be a different race than where the crime rate is higher. And so what the police do, at least what I've read, is they will put a majority of the officers in the high crime area because that's where the crime is. Well, when you do that, you're obviously going to have more interaction and you're going to have more arrests. But if you go the other way, because the people on the lower crime rate would say, well, we're not getting our fair share of policing. The reason there's some robberies over here, maybe not that many, we don't have as many murders on the other side, but because you have all the police over there. But if you went that direction, you said, well, let's spread it out and make it even based on geographical locations, then the area that's got all the crime will have less officers and the crime rate could go up. So you have to think about what's more important to you. Stop and frisk, I'm not into that at all. I think the civil rights of ourselves is more important than what you think might you find in the car. And look, the police have tools. They need the tools. We don't want to take any tools away. But if they understand that the reason why we'd go in a different direction is because we feel that the civil rights are more important than what you might find if you stopped a vehicle with 4 young men in it. Now, maybe the history would show them And we've had some chiefs that were black that would argue this point, that when we do these stops, we end up finding people with warrants. Their car's illegal. They don't have a license. There might be guns in the car. We prevented a crime, future crime possibly. There's drugs in the car maybe. So we're actually helping the community by making these stops. I don't know, man. I guess it depends how you look at it. You know. What I do wish that the schools would do, I saw a video, it was a Chris Rock video, it was funny, what to do when you get pulled over by the police. But I wish they would put together a serious video and play it in the schools for the children throughout the country. And that's what I was talking about when Barack Obama and Eric Holder were in the White House and the Attorney General's office, that come up with ideas. Get with people to say, how do we stop this? What programs can we put in place? I don't know of anything that was done to improve the relationship between the non-white community and the police, who are majority are Caucasian, white. So again, knowing that in itself doesn't mean that that's why the interaction went south. But that's what people are going to latch on to, because they're not seeing it happening over into the other communities. So you can when you have a disadvantaged community, you have to go back. I always try to figure out, how did we get there? How did these communities get where they were? Get how they are? It's not hard to figure out. You just go back a little bit in time. They're still playing catch up. So a lot of these neighborhoods are dilapidated. What teacher would even want to teach in these areas? I go down to St. Louis, or even now it's even in the county, St. Louis, where I grew up. Dilapidated. Disgusting. I don't know who's running these cities. What child would want to be raised in those cities? And then you're going to complain about the crime rate? So if this has been going on for years and years, this mentality of you do what I say, or there's going to be a problem. I need you to stand over there, give me your ID, do this, do that, shut up, get over here, grab by the arm. When that happens, it causes such friction. It causes hatred. And that's a problem. You also have people that aren't experienced with each other's culture. So if a white police officer is in a black neighborhood, he doesn't know anything about the culture. He doesn't live in this community. He's being thrown in there. He's going to freak out. He's going to have a problem relating. And the people in the community, because they're not familiar with the white culture, when they're interacting with the white officer, they're going to have a problem. Because they're going to look at the guy like he's some from outer space. So that interaction on a daily basis for years and years and years has created such a toxic mix that whenever there is a shooting, it's common sense that this is what's going to happen, man. This ain't rocket science now. Excuse me. I remember one time I was 16. I was driving an ice cream truck. My friends, I took this job as an ice cream truck driver because I didn't have a car at the time, and I had my license, but I don't know what happened to my car. But so I took this job so that we had some transportation. It was a big truck too. It wasn't like a van. It was like a UPS truck. It's an ice cream truck, and we thought, well, we'll throw a bunch of beer in the coolers and drive around and have fun, which we did. So I got arrested downtown. My buddies wanted to go down to the Stroll. And I said something to some woman that I shouldn't have said. She was an undercover police officer. And I got taken to jail. And my stupid friends took my van, or took my truck, so it didn't get towed. And they wrecked it. Anyways, I'm in the jail, and it's really dark. I felt like I was in that movie, Midnight Express, like a Turkish prison. It was really dark for whatever reason. And I was in there by myself. And I hear the doors open and somebody's coming down. There's a white police officer. He's got an old black man with him. And he opens the door where I'm at, and he shoves him in there. And he says, "Get in there, nigger." And I couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe that he said that. Now, this is in the 70s, so maybe it was just commonplace. I don't know. But the old man sat on the bench, and what was more surprising was his reaction to that. And he went, "Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah." And I thought, man, that tells me he's heard that 1,000 times. How disgusting is that? How demeaning is that? To treat a citizen that way of the United States of America. See, the mentality is not even a thought. It's like a blink of an eye is nothing. It's not necessary. So hopefully we have, changed our mentality. And again, that's where the diversity is going to really help too. I've been had issues over the years. I wish more minorities would get into law enforcement. But about the video in the school, I wish that they would come up with a video that teaches children how to interact with the police. First of all, be legal. So have a license. Have your car registered if you're going to drive a car. Be respectful. Don't run. Don't carry guns. Don't have drugs in your car, even if it's pot. Hide it in your trunk if you have to. I don't know. I've been pulled over a lot of times. And beer in the car, my friends. We had some cops. They took all of my buck knives. I had about 10 buck knives in my glove box. We were about to get into a scuffle with some guys at the Handy Pantry on Dunn Road in St. Louis. And there was tons of beer in the car, and open containers, empty beer cans. We were drinking all night. And they took the knives and said, "Get out of here." We said, "Wow, they're going to split up the knives. They want those knives." They were big, beautiful buck knives. I think there was like 2 switchblades in there too. They wanted them. They took them. We all should have went to jail, but they let us go. So I've had a lot of interactions where I could have gotten in trouble with the police. I don't want to say victim, because I can't remember every little single detail. So to be fair, I joke and say maybe I deserved every whack. But my brother and I once, we were at Bangor Park. It's a cool park too, because they got a tank, full tank. A big tank in the park. But we were at the park. We were drinking beer. It was late at night, and shouldn't have been in the park because the park was closed. But we were way in the back, next to the creek, under a tree, and we saw the police had pulled somebody over. So stupid me, I said, "Hey, let's go see what's going on." So we go over there, and I had 2 beers, and I put both of them in my back pocket, one on each side. And we went over there. The guy that they had pulled over tried attacking me for whatever reason. I don't know what. So they saw the beers in my back pocket, and they grabbed me and cuffed me up right away. And my brother's just kind of standing back watching. And the officer says, "Get in the car." Now I was 17. And he says, "Get in the car." And I said, "Well, officer, I live right up the street. Less than a block away." I said, "Can't I just go home?" He said, "No, get in the car." And I said, "Well, officer, and he just lost it. He lost it. He took his Maglite flashlight. Now, these things, I don't know if you've ever held one of these. They're about 2 or 3 pounds. Just hits me straight across the face. Comes down on the eyelid and splits open the eyelid. blood's gushing all over the place. And now he's freaking out. I think he is. I don't know. I would be. And he tries to shove me in the car. Well, he grabbed my head with his hand, shoved it, but my head hit the top of the door. So I didn't go quite in. And then second attempt, he got me in there. They rushed me to the hospital. And it's funny because cartoons, you know how they get hit or something, they see stars, little stars. You see stars. I saw stars. It was amazing. It was like ting, 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 little stars. And the doctor, I remember him telling me a tenth of an inch higher, your eye would have been gone. I couldn't open my eye for about 3 weeks. It was all black and purple and about 10 stitches under it. And my mom and dad were very supportive of the police. But when my dad saw that, he was really upset. He was the head of a labor union. And so he knew the mayor, or the Chief Lowry, he was going to go up and complain, but he never got around to it. My mom, after the Rodney King incident, she said, if we would have known then, back then, we would have sued him. But, she goes, I know how you and your brother get. So she was supportive of them. But that, I don't know what to think about that. If I was of a different race and he did that, would it be a racial issue? Would it be because of race? Or do we just kind of attach that? Again, if there's no connection where I could latch on to, I had a black police officer. We were in a bowling alley. We were fighting. And we were getting outgunned. So I went out to my old Chevy Vega to get some baseball bats. I pulled the car up right by the doors, and I threw the beer that was in the car in the trunk. But before I could close the trunk, the police all swarmed up. And the black police officer grabbed me, handcuffed me, and he threw me in his car. And again, I'm 17, stupid me. I called him a pig. And when I did that, he leaned in and he just started punching me. Well, the first punch was a good one. He punched me right on the side of the temple, and I went down into the seats. And then he reached in and just started punching away. So naturally, by instinct, I leaned. I was leaning onto the seats, and my feet came up, and I was kind of trying to get them off me. Well, you don't want to do that. So the other officers saw what was going on, and they ran around to the other door, and they yanked me out that way, and then just kind of body slammed me hard on the ice. It was all icy. It was winter. Thank God I had turned my head because my teeth would have been knocked out. And he took me to the hospital, and he said, if you tell them I hit you, we're going to be in here all night. I said, no, that's fine. And I said, I'm sorry I called you a pig, man. So he apologized too for me, and we started talking. Just talking like regular guys on the way to the hospital. It's funny because the police, the nurse said, are you hurt? And he looked at me, and I said, no, I'm fine. So we do stupid things as citizens, and I always think, I always start with myself. What could I have done differently? Well, I could have gotten in the car. I could have not have called him a name. May have let me go. On both of them, they may have let me go. Maybe just wanted me in the car until everything calmed down. They could figure out what they were doing. But, I was a cocky teen, and he was not playing around. So I probably got what I deserved. I could have complained about it. So, glad we didn't sue. People sue, they just want money. Sometimes it's for principle, but most of the time it's for money. We were fighting with some guys. I don't want to bore you with all these stories, but there's a point behind it. We were fighting with all these guys. I can't remember where it started from, but my car ended up in the White Castle parking lot on New Halls Ferry Road or Highway 67, something like 367. There's a White Castle there. It's a big place. A lot of teenagers hang out on the weekends. So I flew up in the parking lot in a big old Mercury Cougar. And the cops swarmed the car. They got word they thought we had a gun in the car. So now they're ripping apart the car and the trunk and the hood. They're looking for a gun. We didn't have no gun. But the police officer, I had to pee so bad because we were drinking. But he grabbed me by the arm violently and just yanked me, was just pulling me to stand somewhere, I guess. And I lifted my arm. And I went, hey, But it was fast and furious. Suddenly, there was 4 police officers swinging batons. 2 are hitting the thighs and the kneecaps or the calves, whatever they could hit down there. And the other 2 are hitting the elbows. And I'm just deflecting, trying to block all of the different blows. And right in the middle of the parking lot, everybody's watching. Excuse me. And they didn't find a gun, and then they let us go. After about 15, 20 blows. That's Florissant, Missouri for you, Ferguson, Missouri. So, this is going on all the time. But then you have to pick it apart. You have to see where the holes were in these incidents. And I'm not going to remember everything. This is many years ago. So, these videos that should be made, this video or videos should be really, really out there, showing youth how to avoid these kind of confrontations with the police. Because they have enough on their plates. They are dealing with some real bad dudes. And, I've got a little street cred, if you will, on this topic because I started out in hotel security in around 1986 and became an officer in some nice hotels. And then went into, became a lead officer and then a supervisor over the years, different hotels, and then an assistant director, and then up to director of security, where I'm overseeing a staff. One hotel, I've been at 10 hotels, was right on Hollywood Boulevard, had 8 bars in this hotel. 8 bars. Historical landmark, right on Hollywood Boulevard across from the Mann's Chinese Theater. 8 bars, 3 of them were nightclubs. The pool held 700 people. 60 cabana rooms surrounding this pool. So you'd have about 700 out there. And these nightclubs are packed. People are getting drunk. So I had a large in-house staff. Then we used an outside security company to help us as well. But we had 300 rooms to babysit. So partying in the rooms, partying in the cabanas, partying out of the pool, partying at all the bars. Who puts 8 bars in a hotel? So we made arrests all the time for all sorts of things. Trespassing, assault on an officer, domestic violence. You name it, it's there. I mean, fights, destruction of property. It's like a little town, a hotel. And when you get that many people drinking and partying in it, you're going to have problems. And we had problems every day, every night. They had DJs every night, pool parties every night, swim night. It was insane. And so people, officers, can get their buttons pushed. I've seen great guys that I still communicate with. We talk about some of these arrests. Some of them didn't go down as good as they should have. And sometimes it's the other people. So what I try to say when I hire is I'm looking for, aside from the normal reliability and taking direction well, is a high tolerance for violence, a high tolerance of anger, because you're going to get your buttons pushed. You got to be able to relate or handle those situations. And I've had some guys that just can't. We had to get rid of them. They're very volatile. They started off good. They interviewed well. But under pressure, they'd lose it. I've seen guys, we'd have people in handcuffs and they're just poking the guy. What are you doing? Stop. Go stand over there. Calm down. Or when a fight's going down, and what can happen is, too, the officer starts off professionally, and I'm not saying he's going to be unprofessional here, but when somebody starts fighting back or resisting, I should have put that up there with the other ones, reasonable suspicion, you resisted arrest. But when somebody starts fighting back or resisting, you have to up the physicalness to overcome their physicalness to secure the arrest, to get the handcuffs on. Once the handcuffs on, they're pretty much rendered useless. So you have to, and you can feel your anger or your aggression getting more intense because you have to combat, because you don't want to lose. You don't want to be on the losing end. You don't know if this guy's going to choke you to death and kill you. You don't know what he has in his pockets. You don't know what his intent is. You don't know if this guy's a bad dude that just got out of prison. And so he's starting to fight with us. We've had to fight 8, 9 guys at a time. We had 10. Thank God. You always want to try to have a couple extra than what they have. Crazy stuff, man. Brawls. But so sometimes the intention is starting off okay, and it just something happens that triggers that goes in a direction that it shouldn't go. And then we'll look at it after the fact and say, hey, look, let's talk about what happened. It didn't go down the way it should have. Or it's good job, great job. You handled that well. Sometimes officers will tell the other guy, hey, step back, I'll take it from here. Because he sees the officer starting to lose his temper. He's getting his buttons pushed. The guy's getting to him. I've had officers just lose it. Just cold cock people. What are you doing? He just got to me, man. This guy comes here all the time. He starts the same shit. And so we're all human. We're all human. We all make mistakes. We're all regular guys. We've been sued many times for the security arrests that went down. They go get an attorney. He beat me up. He handcuffed me and hurt my wrist. I was unlawfully detained. I was held a prisoner. False imprisonment. Assault and battery. The whole thing. And so I have to pick it apart. I have to generate a report. I have to put some footage together, some camera footage. I've got to talk to witness, get witness statements, and pick it apart and see where the holes were. Usually there's holes on both sides. But I've got to do that in order to be fair. Sometimes I'm not there, and it happens with my officers. Sometimes I'm right there. I was never going to not get into the mix because I didn't want them to think that I was not worthy. I'm going to stand back and just direct them to fight. I've gotten injured many times. And so it's if you think you're a tough guy, and I've hired some big bad dudes. Not bad like a bad person. I'm talking about physically. They just were badasses. I had nicknames for some of them. Freight Train or the Slammer, whatever. But we're just regular guys trying to do a job, keeping people safe. When people get out of line, we tell them to leave. They refuse to leave. Then we just say, you're subject to trespass. You're going to have to get out of here. We're going to cuff you up. Or we'll wait you out, wait for the police to arrive. But if you start disrupting stuff and start going crazy on us, we're gonna subdue you. And when you go to subdue them, that's where things can go south. You can get hurt, they can get hurt, and we don't want that. Nobody wants that. But I'm sure there are police out there, just like some of my guys, that just took out their aggression on people. Or they were tired of these kind of guys in society, and they were going to send a message. You're not going to come here and do that. This is what's going to happen to you. So do it somewhere else, and I hope it happens to you over there as well. So we have to be real understanding and kind of pick these incidents and these issues apart. We can't just throw a broad brush on them. It doesn't happen that way. It just doesn't happen that way. So my advice again would be to anybody that could make a video is to show how police officers should approach. And one thing I see that I don't see is just explain why you're pulling them over. What I would tell officers, when you're giving someone a directive, tell them why you're giving them that directive so they don't think you're power tripping. People can't stand power trippers. And we've had to call LAPD. Sometimes guys come over, they're spot on. Then I have other guys that come over, they got attitude problems, and they act bossy even with us. Then I get some to come over, and I might as well just say thanks anyway. They physically didn't have the size I was looking for to combat this aggressive, violent person or persons in a room that we needed to get out of there. We've had to take these guys out while the police are just standing there because I thought they were going to get hurt. They were short and small and fat. Yeah. So that approach, though, that respectful approach to just say, hey, how you guys doing? The reason I pulled you over was blah, 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 blah. And some police do that. That's my first advice, is just explain why you're stopping someone, because that's kind of a violation just in itself. You're stopping me. And I tell you, when you're legal, when your car's legal, when you have no warrants, when your license is all legit, you'll never see the police. They just don't exist. But as soon as your plates get expired, you forgot to pay a ticket or something, there's police everywhere. You always get pulled over. It's amazing how that works. So when you get pulled over, especially if you're in a community that gets pulled over all the time, or there's a perception that the reason they're doing it is because of your certain race, that's frustrating. And so you should really go out of your way to show that you're not that guy. You're not that cop. That goes back to confidence. Say, when you're a confident cop, you're not worried about it. So you should go out of your way to show people that you're not that guy and that you're just pulling them over because you're doing your job because of this. Your plates are expired, man. Why are your plates expired? You don't have to come at people so hard in the beginning. I tell guys, look, you got to be able to flip that script. You got to be able to say, hi, 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 hello, how are you? Good to see you. Nice to meet you. Thank you. Welcome. But as soon as the guy gives off, get out of my face, then it's, excuse me, it's time to go. Now I'm going to change. But I don't start off that way. And I think if the police don't start off that way, and again, it could be just this mentality that over the years that, look, guys, you got to go home at night. You have to take control. You have to be very stern and firm. Because if you're not, and you show a sign of weakness, they're going to pounce on you. And I don't think that's always the case. It might be sometimes, and you got to gauge that. You got to gauge that. You can gauge that right off the bat. You can sense it. The first word. Now, we've had, again, these shootings, or some of the shootings are very, very bad shootings, some of them. And some of them, I don't know if you could explain it away because of race. Like there was a call, there was the one, it's just horrible, horrible. Little 12-year-olds playing with a fake gun in the park. Now, I don't know how he got the gun. I don't know if his parents gave it to him or he just found it in his garage somewhere. I don't know. It was a toy gun. I mean, we used to play with guns, but I don't know if we took them to the park. But nowadays, with the all the stuff that's going on, that's probably not a very good decision. So I'm not sure who was overseeing this young boy. He was 12. Just ridiculously sad. And he's in the park playing, and the police get a call. There's a man with a gun. A man with a gun, not a boy. I don't know. I think he said a man with a gun. But instead of taking a faraway position to kind of gauge and ascertain what's going on from a distance, I mean, you wouldn't want to pull right up on somebody that has a gun, start shooting at you. But they zoom right up to him, just a few feet away, jump out of the car, start shooting. Not even hands up, drop the gun, nothing, just shoot away. Kill the boy. Oh, it's a fake gun. I don't know if that's lack of training I don't know if that's that jerk cop. I don't know. Now, you had the Freddie Gray, where you saw him on tape throwing him in the back of a van. There you had some black police officers involved in that case. So then it was the community didn't care. It wasn't about that. It was about police now. So they're going to start with police, and then if there's some race in it, then they'll go to race as well, and it's a duel. That's why diversity is so important. That's why we need to diversify. Outreach, try to get more people into law enforcement or into areas that they're not well represented right now. We talk about the criminal justice system. Well, if you have 2 black judges throughout the whole country, what's the reason? How many people are going to law school in the African-American community versus sports or music or whatever, acting? I mean, you only have so many people. You got to eliminate everybody that's from 17 down, and then maybe from 65 and up, retired. You got a chunk there of people that's available for work or school. So if the numbers aren't there, you're going to have these issues if they're not going into these kinds of professions. But I'd love to see more diversity in law enforcement. They need to change that mentality, change that image, do a lot of outreach, put some videos out, come up with solutions, one community at a time, to try to better those relationships between the police and the different communities out there. I would love to see gun ranges in minority communities. I think the fascination with guns would go away. They have them all out here in Santa Clarita, where I live. We go there all the time shooting. It's a little freaky, though. There's a couple of guys just right next to me with these AR-15s just going at it. Just boom, 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 boom. Yeah. All they have to do is just turn on me. So you got one eye kind of looking over like, well, okay. But, some people might be against that. I think it might be a good thing, actually. Take away that fascination. But that outreach is so important. We have to let the communities know that there are some knucklehead police because there's some knucklehead postal workers. There's some knuckleheads that work at Ralph's. There's some knucklehead HR directors. I've had some that general managers. I've had some great general managers. I've had some that weren't so great. And some just... So you're going to get that on the police force. But when you have those high-profile cases, the Eric Garner case, it was ridiculous. There's a man just selling cigarettes on the street. Not even weed, just cigarettes. And he's surrounded by people. Now, this goes to where that training of the community comes in. Look, if they're going to try to put handcuffs on you, just turn around and put your hands behind your back. So you can see that they're trying to grab him, and he's got his hands going where it's like, get away from me. Now, that's not a good thing to do. But there was a sergeant there. And good Lord, they could have just subdued the guy. But one way you don't want to subdue somebody is with a chokehold or a head or neck lock. They banned chokeholds because for many years what was happening was the police were using their billy clubs to get behind the individual and start choking them for compliance so they would comply, or they'd use their hands. The problem with that is when you start squeezing on the human body, the neck especially, and you cut off the airway, the natural instinct is to try to resist to get the person off of your neck so you can breathe. Well, now that you're doing that, they apply more pressure because they think you're resisting, which you are because it's natural to resist when you're doing that to the human body. Well, so people would end up dead. And they'd say, well, he resisted. I feared for my life. There's another one. The problem I have, one of the problems I have is when people get shot and killed and they didn't even have a gun. I thought he had a gun. Well, you thought wrong. You're fired and you're going to have to go to court and see what they're going to do with you. You can't knee jerk with your weapon. It's you've got to be like a sharpshooter. You've got to be precise with it. And again, on the police side of it, I get it. I understand. You're not willing to take that extra chance, that extra second, because your life's on the line as well. You have a kid. He's initiated this whole scenario. This shouldn't even be happening if not for this individual. And now I'm going to take the bullet. We understand. It's not easy. It's not even close to being easy. But I don't know. I don't even know if extra training could do it, because each case is different, each scenario, each situation, each thought that goes through a human's mind, a spur of the moment. There was one where a gentleman said he had a gun, and he said, well, let me see your ID, and he starts to get the ID, and he goes, don't be pulling the gun out, which his girlfriend's going, he's not pulling it out. You told him to get, and he just starts shooting the guy, kills him, because he said he thought he was pulling his gun out. The Eric Garner case, though, the guy jumped up and grabbed him by the neck to bring him down. He should have just let go. A couple of guys should have had, his legs and his arms. But it didn't go down that way. We will continue next. Actually, I'm off the next 2 weeks, like I said, for my vacation, going out to Italy. This is a long, intense topic. So we will continue with this topic, part 2 of it, the next time I come back on Monday. So from LA Talk Radio, my name is Jeff Hanlon. This is the show of Race and Religion. Thank you and goodbye.
You're listening to Race and Religion with Jeff Hanlon, only on LA Talk Radio.